My name's Brian Steele. I have my own consultancy, but my other role is a non-executive advisor on Nonius' board. And this is Manuel, who is the Mobile Business Unit Director. What we're going to talk about today, basically, is a couple of case studies and work we did with EHL. But firstly, just so you understand who Nonius is, because it's one of these closely guarded secrets. They actually operate in 100 countries. They have 445,000 rooms in over 4,000 properties. And in green, those are the numbers for the UK in terms of our presence in the UK. So there's an office in London and an office in Newcastle as well. In terms of what we do, it's trying to provide an integrated solution suite that addresses the entire digital guest journey. So that's the objective, if you like. So at the top are our mobile solutions, and Manuel later is going to do a demo of some work we've been doing with London hotels. And then the green stuff is all your more traditional guest technology, and TV and things counts as digital, particularly when you put QR codes on it to allow ordering, table booking, all sorts of things within the hotel. And the bit at the bottom, which looks fairly simple, but is the hub, that is integration with over 100 third parties. It also is integration of our own solutions, but that covers integration with around 40 PMSs, door lock systems, payment providers, so a whole heap of stuff. And we also bring internet feeds into that, like weather, flight arrival and departure information for airports and so on, and make that available to all of our applications. So that's kind of the framework, if you like, that we're operating within. We recently sponsored a project with EHL. It now calls itself, but for those who know the old name, called Hotelier de Lausanne. And they were taken on 6 students working for 8 weeks. I mentored from the Nonius side, and Ian Miller, who many of you will know, is one of the lecturers at EHL. He sponsored it their side. And we asked them basically to look at the whole portfolio. We're also going to talk about a couple of projects that we have done in London with lower group hotels. One being Sea Containers on the South Bank, which has got 359 rooms. And they basically have all of Nonius' solutions with the exception of digital signage, because they don't do digital signage in public areas. And then the next one is 100 Shoreditch, which was the second London lower group hotel that opened earlier this year. 259 rooms, which basically replicated what had been done at Sea Containers. EHL, based in Lausanne, they were basically given a project where the scope was to look at how our solutions could be more effectively marketed, and I'm not going to talk about that because we are going to try and keep it to case studies. So you won't get prizes from us either, I'm afraid, today. But we asked them also to look post-COVID, what are hoteliers looking for functionally, and have we got any gaps in our solutions that we should be filling. We also asked them to look at the usability of the solutions, because they won't get adopted if they're not easy to use. And also to look at whether there were ways we could better be supporting staff in the use of the technology, primarily because of these pressures at the moment on recruitment and so on. They also were given the brief that it had to be an international project because we are an international company. And so they talked to over 15 CIOs, asset managers, consultants from around the world. And they also reviewed, there's actually 115 papers that they reference in the report that they wrote to us. So part of the findings is based on those papers and part on their interviews. Overall, they identified that technology spend that is planned in the sort of mid-scale, upper mid-scale and luxury hotels are these sort of numbers. I was quite surprised how high they are. Maybe you're surprised how high they are. But I think there's also an appreciation that more and more guests are doing things for themselves, and that requires investment to facilitate it. And if you're going to try and save energy in hotels, then more investment has to go into technology to allow you to do that as well. The mobile apps that are being explored in terms of functionality are things like check-in, the door key, payments and ordering. Guest communications and chat is in there, and you can obviously read the rest, but room management. I thought the interesting one there is booking housekeeping slots. You actually try and book when your housekeeping is going to be done, when your room will be serviced. That was an interesting one, I thought. In terms of overall findings, energy saving is up there. That's not surprising exactly with current gas and electricity prices. And that's really looking at room automation all the way from controlling lighting, temperature, and curtains. Curtains seems a weird one to some people, but actually, when it's cold, if you shut the curtains, it keeps the heat in the winter. And in the summer, if you shut the curtains when the sun's shining, it stops the room getting too hot, which means you don't do as much heating or cooling in the rooms. So that's the reason why you should think about automating curtains. And IoT comes up there as well in terms of monitoring the room environments and therefore that influencing the control, and water conservation. In terms of futures, what was being identified by their work was that facial recognitions and biometrics is being looked at, both to facilitate that whole check-in process, but also guest recognition within the property. And also body area sensors that kind of look at how hot you are and adjust the temperature accordingly, or adjust the lighting so you get a good night's sleep. So some things like that. And augmented reality, virtual reality, metaverse, in terms of the preview of rooms, digital tours, etc. I think that's an interesting one in view of the cyber currency crash that's just happened, because now some people are saying, well, is the same going to happen to metaverse? Is that another hyped up technology that will or won't really be realized? The dependencies are really important. One is data management, rubbish in, rubbish out. So if you don't collect good data, if you don't manage your data well, then you'll end up with challenges. Data privacy is significant, particularly here in Europe with GDPR. Stuff like facial recognition, you can only do it really on the basis of legitimate interest or consent. And if people start to think it's creepy, it's likely not to pass a legitimate interest assessment if you're being honest about your assessment. Staff engagement is really important. It's all very well having technology, but if the processes behind that technology aren't in place and the staff aren't following those processes, then you're not going to have a successful project. And finally, the technology needs to be usable, and it needs to be the right balance between technology and people interaction. So if we look now at the case study of what was done at Sea Containers, Nonius's engagement with them actually started with a Wi-Fi project back in May 2020. Then the pandemic had hit, and the GM basically wanted to remove all the collateral from the rooms because everyone was trying to reduce contact with surfaces, and also wanted to have a mobile check-in process to reduce queuing and pressure in the lobbies and at receptions. And so that meant that there was a mobile app developed for the hotel, all the collateral went into it, and also mobile key. And that actually got delivered in 4 weeks from them placing the order. So, you know, there's talk about apps cost lots to develop for hotels. That's not quite true. The reality is that a correctly architected app platform is a configurable thing. So you're actually configuring for the hotel and putting their branding and their content in there, but you're not developing for them per se. And that's why it can be so quick to develop, or deploy rather. And then mobile check-in came in, which was basically inviting a guest to click on a link and provide all of the registration details so they didn't have to do it on the reg card. The hotel then introduced the voice solution to replace one of the big PBX providers and one of the well-known people who do call logging and voicemail. And then, because lots of people were working at home because of COVID, they asked us to do a Microsoft Teams integration, which took about 3 weeks to deliver, which meant all of the calls were routing to the people working at home on the PCs that we're using there. And then in 2021, the company asked us to develop a loyalty program which supports multiple tiers, and it can support awarding of different amount of points depending on your tiers and so on. That was delivered in 2021, and we also implemented the Nonius CAST solution, which won an HTNG award, to go with their IPTV solution, which is also a Nonius one. In terms of the benefits, clearly the safer guest journey was a goal at the beginning of pandemic, and that was delivered. One of the real neat things about the whole mobile registration process is that we can make capturing the guest email address mandatory. So if it's an OTA booking, we then, through the integration with the PMS, overwrite the OTA email address with their real email address, and then that can facilitate direct booking. That's quite an important one, because for sea containers, they knew the percentage of people who were coming back to the hotel rebooking, and even taking kind of a modest percentage of those converting to direct booking rather than OTA delivered a six-figure number in terms of financial benefit. They also increased F&B revenue in the hotel significantly once it was possible to just scan a QR code on the Nonius TV or use the app to actually do in-room ordering. So that improved that by around about 90,000 in their revenues. And they also saved on the collateral, so the cost of printing and the cost of people putting things in rooms. They had quite a big saving on replacement keys, actually. They saved several £1,000s a year just on keys that people take away. And on the annual voice support, basically the savings on the support contracts for the traditional solutions paid for the implementation of the Nonius voice in 2 years. And thereafter, there's over £8,000 a year just going to the bottom line in terms of support savings. And there are now 11,000 shipmates in their program. So that was kind of sea containers in the story. Overall, if you look at the investment on the mobile side, it was under 4-month payback. And if you look at the investment on the voice solution, as I say, that's a 2-year payback. Looking then at 100 Shoreditch, it used to be the Ace Hotel London. It's a building that Lower Group owned, and they've now are operating it as an owner-managed hotel. So 100 Shoreditch, these slides that I'm showing are the hotel manager's slides, because he participated in a Hospace event several months ago. But his goals really were about addressing COVID from an efficiency and process point of view. He wanted to be paperless. He was interested in driving revenue at digital touch points. And he wanted a good guest experience so people came back again. And it is quite a full hotel, with quite a good rate as well, actually. So in terms of their approach, it was very much about leveraging the experience that had been gained elsewhere. So after sea containers, a lot of the Nonius technology was retrofitted at Riggs, Washington, D.C. But then they also rebranded the Carlisle in Washington, D.C. to the Lisle, manage operated again, and that's entirely Nonius when that hotel reopened. And basically that's what's also happened with 100 Shoreditch, so they've put all the solutions in. And it leverages investments also because through the Nonius hub, where they had other technology they'd selected, we've integrated that technology into the overall guest experience using the Nonius hub. And that was delivered in February this year. So overall, they were looking to drive up efficiency, to have a good guest experience at as low a cost as possible. So that was the objective. And that was achieved, but Mark also sort of reflected on it and felt that the environmental impact and benefit that had come from what they did at 100 Shoreditch was the fact that they have reduced the number of plastic keys, the folders that they go in, the number of registration cards, because that's all digital. They don't print any room collateral at all. That's all, again, in the app. And through the app, you can also access Press Reader. You can do that in sea containers too. So while you're on the network in the hotel, you're able to access the premium Press Reader service for magazines and for newspapers. And really his testimonial that he summarized with was just a proven track record and the fact that Nonius's technology is their own, it's in their control, and they tailor the solutions and the portfolio for the client. It's quite interesting to think about what's the rationale for doing this sort of stuff. And initially, this got driven really because of COVID. Nonius as a company actually grew through the pandemic, which is unusual for a guest technology facing company. But we grew through the pandemic, and a lot of that growth came from people looking to do things like apps and digitization of collateral. And it was about providing that safer guest journey and also safer environment for staff to work. Interestingly, in parallel to the project, which Sea Containers and Lower Group didn't participate in, but there was a project in HTNG with literally tens of hoteliers and tens of vendors working together in terms of what do we need to do to reopen our hotels when lockdown ends, in essence. I mean, not just UK, this is a global initiative. And they came up with these areas as ones that impacted in particular the hotel arrival, stay, and exit experience for guests. And interestingly, Nonius was able to address all of those in terms of solutions, be that the fact that the TV remote and the voice extension in the room can be in the app, that you can use the app to control lighting and temperature and curtains with integrations with room management solutions. So it was just interesting for us that kind of in parallel this piece of work was going on. So with the exception of the room management, because neither Sea Containers nor 100 Shoreditch have room management solutions that allow you to control the room, they actually managed to put ticks in all the boxes. Today, what's the rationale for doing this stuff? A lot of people maybe want to keep things safe, but probably the biggest drivers we're discovering are the fact that guests got used to doing things themselves and having the flexibility to do mobile check-in and maybe to bypass the front desk and stuff like that. And many want to continue doing that. It's a bit like how many people actually want to go to the desk in the airport and check in rather than do it on their app or do it on the web. A bit of the same influence is coming in there. But also, there seems to be quite a drive at the moment to facilitate guest self-service just because of the challenge of actually staffing hotels. We heard in earlier sessions how some hotels aren't fully open because they haven't got enough staff. So that's the EHL bit, that's the 2 hotels and the projects that have been done there. Manuel's now going to come and he's actually going to demo an enhanced check-in process that we're actually going to be piloting at 100 Shoreditch shortly. And their objective is that the guest, if they wish, can go through the registration process, have a key, and go straight to their room without having to come to reception. That's their objective. Thank you.
All right. So showing the guest experience throughout the journey with the online check-in, then also the mobile key, the app, etc. I think gives a more, it's always interesting to see the system working. Just before I jump to the demo, so just to highlight the Nonius mobile solution, it's a modular solution. So basically hotels can pick and choose which modules to enable based on their vision for the guest journey, based on of course, some infrastructure requirements if the locks are ready for mobile key and other things. But basically, it starts, of course, with the guest app that can either be a native application, iOS and Android, which is a requirement today for mobile key or soft phone, for example, but can also be a web app and can support all the other functionality. And then check in, check out with the PMS, other control of the other devices in the room, domotics, etc., F&B, and a series of tools for staff and communication as well. So this is my smartphone I'm sharing here. Hope it goes well with the connection, everything we can show it working well. So basically starting with the online check-in. So of course our system integrates with the PMS, and that allows us to basically be able to know all the guests that are coming in the next weeks and months, and then our system can trigger an email invitation to the guests 3 days prior to arrival, 5 days, it's configurable, inviting the guests to start the process with the online check-in part. This is a completely customizable email where basically all the branding, this is just an example with the hotel, but of course this is completely branded for the hotel group or independent hotel. And the magic thing of this email is that it includes a link. So in this case, without needing at this stage to download an app, I can simply click that button and it takes me to my online check-in process. I can access my reservation details and I can start to check in. So it's a two-way integration with the PMSs. So of course, any existing information on the guest profile will be presented here. The guest can complete any missing information. In this example, birth date, insert their ID information as well, for example. They can also add a picture of the ID. Yeah. And this is uploading a photo of the document or taking with the camera, but also we are developing to have early next year also an ID validation with AI. So this will be a new feature, a new enhancement that will come to also improve this or to enrich this process. The contacts, address, and basically all the fields you see here are customizable, so the hotel can decide which ones are present, which ones are mandatory, optional, etc. No? We then also have the marketing consents, any small print of the registration card, so privacy policy, terms and conditions. I can also sign digitally. So as part of this process, hotels can also take this moment of contact with the guests prior to arrival to any additional services they would like to propose, to if they would like to book a car transfer, if they have a preference of a high floor, low floor. So any questions, just examples, but any question can be placed here to invite the guests to answer before the arrival. And then we also have the payment option, so to invite guests to either make a deposit, a full payment, or a pre-authorization that is then tokenized and pushed to the PMS. So this is just an example. And of course, depending on we usually integrate always with the payment gateway that the hotels are also using. And we have, I think, more than 10 gateways already. But basically, I'll just put here, it's just a dummy example. Just putting my card details and paying. So once the payment is confirmed, then we get information that the pre-check-in was completed, the credit card payment as well. All the profile information is automatically updated in the PMS, so there's no need to be copying information from one side to the other. If I go back to my email, I will also get a confirmation email from the hotel. Again, all the wording and copy can be fully adapted here, but the idea is a good moment to advise the guests about the next steps regarding their reservation, and also if there's an app, for example for mobile key, it's a good moment to incentivize the download of the app for the guests to prepare for their stay. So I'll just click here, app for download. In this case, I already have it installed. This is the Guest.you app. It's the brand for our mobile solution. We invite you to download this app. It's a demo application, so it actually shows this example of the hotel. But it's a good example of many features that the app can have. But again, what will be available in this case on the App Store, it's the hotel brand. It's not Nonius or Guest.you, and it's completely branded. And what the guest will see, it's the hotel application and not our, let's say. So in this case, of course, if I have already have the app, if I added my reservation to the app on the check-in part, I'm able to see that check-in is available in 3 hours from now. And then we have we have different options on the flow depending on how the hotel has their operations. So something we've added this year is the possibility to do a self-check-in. So this means that when arriving 3 p.m. or the hour that's defined for the hotel, the guest will actually be able to have a button here that will allow him to self-check-in and will be informed of the room number that's assigned on the PMS. But what we also have working with many hotels is that the staff is doing the check-in on the PMS and the guest is notified that the room is ready and they can actually go to the room, use the key, etc. No? So I'll switch here to, this is a PMS simulator. So basically just pretending we've created a reservation here. So this is the guest Lima. I will now assign a room and check in the guest. And just try to show you here this. So I'll just check in. And this will then notify the guest. So here I'll see, welcome to the hotel, your room is ready, 107, and you can actually, again, this is a text message that can be triggered from the, once the reservation is checked on the PMS, can invite the guest to download the app, and can, again, have the link for the app download, also use that to incentivize, no? Once it's checked in, then the app is updated, so I can already, for example, now get my room key. So we integrate with all the major door lock systems, now including as well KeyStep is also present today at the show. And basically, we can enable the key, and then once the key is enabled, throughout my stay, I'll have the key available, setup is complete, and I will have this open door button on the app that allows me, the first time it will ask me to activate Bluetooth, and then just starts the scanning, and I can just put the phone next to the lock and it will unlock using BLE, so Bluetooth Low Energy. This is a triangle between the door lock system, the PMS, and the app. So imagine that in the PMS we do a room change or an early checkout. The app is updated so that the key is also correctly updated. No? So if it's a room move, then I lose the key access to my current room, and I can generate the key to the new room. Or if it's an early checkout, I will stop having access to that key. No? Other examples of features that through the app the guest is able to control. Again, these are all those modules that we were seeing that depending on, that can be enabled or not depending on the hotel and the technology they are providing. But for example, to have the soft phone extension, so this means that the guest will have the possibility to make calls using the room extension. So even if it's outside the room, they can make and receive calls as connected to the telephony system. And this can have shortcuts to call reception, call the spa, and to be able to make and receive calls while, usually by standard, while you are on the hotel Wi-Fi. Then depending on the setup, it's also possible, even if guests are outside the hotel, to also have access to the room key.
Thank you for your attention. Appreciate it.
Thank you.